Number 7. Plymouth Valiant, 1960 to 1962. The Plymouth Valiant launched in 1960 as Chrysler's entry into the compact segment, built around the slant-six engine, a genuinely innovative design tilted at 30 degrees to lower the hood line, and one that would eventually earn a strong and well-deserved reputation for reliability. People remember that engine. What they forget is that legends usually look cleaner in hindsight than they did in their earliest years. Owner and dealer feedback from the early production run pointed to issues consistent with a platform that had not completed a full development cycle before reaching customers, fit and finish that varied between units, quality inconsistencies that Chrysler would spend subsequent model years correcting. The car also arrived during a period when Chrysler's manufacturing quality was broadly under pressure, and some of the problems owners encountered likely reflected that wider context as much as anything specific to the Valiant itself. To be fair, the car improved measurably as the decade progressed, and the Slant 6 ultimately became one of the more trusted engines in American automotive history. Number 6. Dodge Dart, 1960 to 1962. This next one is exactly the kind of car people argue about, not because it was beloved by everyone, but because later versions cleaned up the reputation that early buyers had to suffer through. The Dart name would later stand for durability, which is exactly why the early versions are so uncomfortable to revisit honestly. The Dodge Dart of the early 1960s arrived during one of the more difficult manufacturing periods in Chrysler's history, and the quality concerns that characterized Chrysler broadly in those years were present in early Dart ownership experiences as well. Owner feedback from the period pointed to inconsistencies in build quality, fit, and finish that the brand's reputation suggested buyers should not have encountered. Whether specific failure patterns were systematically worse on this model than comparable cars of the era is a question the historical record answers less cleanly than some accounts suggest. What the record does support is that the early Dart's ownership experience did not reflect the reliability the Dodge name carried at the time. That doesn't mean every owner hated it. Some people got along fine, but the gap between the brand's promise and the early car's reality was wide enough to earn it a place here, and wide enough that Dodge spent the rest of the decade working to close it. Number 5. Austin America, 1968 to 1975. If you've never owned one, this may sound like a forgotten footnote. If you did, you probably remember it very differently. The Austin America arrived as British Leyland's attempt to establish a credible presence in the American compact market, a car with genuine engineering ambition and a market execution that struggled to support it. The transverse-mounted engine and front-wheel drive layout were legitimate technical achievements, and the hydrolastic suspension impressed reviewers on early contact. The semi-automatic transmission fitted to most American market cars attracted significant criticism, with reported problems ranging from difficult engagement to more serious mechanical failures, though accounts vary on how widespread the worst cases actually were. What is consistent across the period record is that the transmission's reputation became a serious liability, and the dealer network in America was simply not equipped to support a vehicle of this complexity. Body sealing fell short of what the market expected, and parts availability extended repair timelines well beyond what any daily driver could absorb. Number 4. AMC Marlin, 1965 to 1967. Some cars fail because they break. Others fail because they never really knew what they wanted to be. The Marlin belongs in that second category. The AMC Marlin was American Motors' attempt to enter the fastback market that the Mustang had ignited in 1964. The concept was commercially reasonable. Fastbacks were popular, and AMC needed something that felt more exciting than its practical reputation suggested. And even today, some people still admire the Marlin precisely because it tried to be different. But that difference came at a real cost. The fastback roofline was grafted onto the existing Rambler Classic and Ambassador platforms in ways that produced proportions most buyers found awkward. Too large to feel truly sporty, too style-driven to function as a convincing family car. The rear headroom suffered directly from the roofline. The base drivetrain was uninspiring, and the car's weight worked against every sporting claim the styling was trying to make. Sales fell well below projections in all 3 model years. Number 3. Oldsmobile Jetfire, 1962 to 1963. This is one of those cars that enthusiasts love to admire from a distance. Living with it was a very different experience. The Oldsmobile Jetfire was the first American production car to use a turbocharged engine, a genuine technical achievement that arrived approximately 2 decades before the technology was reliable enough to support everyday use. The 215 cubic inch aluminum V8 produced competitive power, and the turbocharger added performance that attracted buyers who wanted something technically distinctive. What those buyers discovered was a system requiring a separate fluid reservoir, a mixture of water and alcohol called turbo rocket fluid, to prevent detonation under boost. When that fluid ran low, which happened regularly because many owners were simply unaware of its function, the engine was subject to serious internal damage. Dealers reported warranty claims well above projected rates, and diagnosing fluid-related failures became routine in service departments. The turbocharger itself was prone to seal failures that introduced oil into the intake, requiring expensive rebuilds. Oldsmobile discontinued the Jetfire after just 2 model years. The Jetfire was the kind of car people loved talking about, right up until they had to live with it. Time has been kinder to it than ownership usually was. And now we get to the car that still starts arguments more than half a century later. Few cars from the 1960s still divide people like the Corvair, which is usually a sign that the truth is more complicated than either side wants to admit. The Chevrolet Corvair was genuinely innovative, a rear-engined, air-cooled compact that represented a real departure from American manufacturing norms, positioned as the domestic answer to European imports. For a period, the concept found a real and enthusiastic audience. The handling characteristics of the early design became the source of serious and sustained controversy. The swing-axle rear suspension used through 1963 could, under specific combinations of speed, cornering load, and tire pressure, produce oversteer behavior that drivers found difficult to manage. Ralph Nader documented these characteristics in Unsafe at Any Speed in 1965, making the Corvair the central example in a broader argument about automotive safety that contributed to federal safety legislation later in the decade. To be fair, the story has never been as simple as its reputation. Some owners loved them. Later revisions genuinely improved the design, and a 1972 NTHC study concluded that the early Corvair's handling compared favorably to several contemporary vehicles, a finding that complicated the more absolute version of the story.
No list like this would feel complete without the car that became America's most famous symbol of automotive failure. The Ford Edsel program had already established its reputation before the 1960 model year arrived, but the final version deserves the top position because it represents something specific, a company that had received every possible signal that a product was failing and continued producing it anyway until the evidence became impossible to ignore. Ford had invested over $250 million, more than $2 billion in today's terms, in a car that buyers rejected immediately and consistently from its 1958 introduction. The vertical grille design that internal research had approved generated public mockery from the first day of sales. Quality control was poor enough that journalists and buyers documented push-button transmission failures, oil leaks, and panel fit issues on cars marketed with extraordinary anticipation. By 1960, the Edsel program was producing cars in minimal numbers for a market that had already moved on entirely. Fewer than 2,800 units were built in the final model year before Ford canceled the program. And yet, even now, there are still people who admire what Ford was trying to do, who see the ambition behind the disaster and find something worth respecting in it.